1. Back to home. Everyone in the school was celebrating today. Laughter echoed in the dormitory halls. Confetti fluttered through the air like cherry blossoms in spring. Some students posed for pictures, arms slung around shoulders, eyes sparkling with freedom. Others cried quietly, clutching friends who had become like family. It was the last day of high school, a day we all knew would come, yet never quite believed would arrive so soon. I stood by the window in my uniform one last time, tracing the edge of the pane with my fingertips. It was warm outside, but there was a chill inside my heart. When I first came here, I cried a lot. I remember the day vividly. I was just 13, barely taller than the suitcase I dragged behind me. My parents waved from the car as the headmistress greeted me. I had refused to look back, not because I was brave, but because I knew if I saw my mother's eyes soft, sad, and full of love, I'd never let go. I hated it here at first. The beds were cold, the rules were strict, and the silence at night was unbearable. I would pull the blanket over my head and cry until I fell asleep, whispering my little brother's name like a prayer. But then, things changed. I met people who made me laugh. I found a corner of the library that felt like my own little world. I learned how to braid my hair by myself and how to stand up for my beliefs even when my voice trembled. Somewhere between the first failed math test and the final exam, I grew up. And now today, I was going home, back to the warmth of my mother's cooking, to the sound of Dad humming off-key in the kitchen, to my brother's annoying but comforting presence. So why were my eyes still wet? Maybe because home wasn't just there anymore. It had stretched, split, and quietly grown roots here too, among these red brick walls, in the dusty classrooms, in late-night talks under shared blankets, and whispered secrets before lights out. Hannah, someone called behind me. It was Tiana, my roommate. Her mascara was smudged, her eyes red. Come on, they're taking one last group photo. I smiled and nodded, wiping the corner of my eyes quickly. I didn't want anyone to see me cry again, not today. As we all lined up under the school arch, I looked up at the sign that had once felt like a prison gate. Now, it felt like a memory, a bittersweet one. The camera clicked, and just like that, a chapter ended. Tomorrow, I'll be home again, but a part of me will always remain here. Chapter 2, The Familiar Unknown. The train jerked forward with a soft rumble, pulling away from the station, taking me home. I sat by the window, my chin resting against my palm, watching the school fade into the distance. Slowly, the red roofs and tall gates disappeared behind. The trees, swallowed by green fields and winding roads. Just like that, 7 years of memories slipped away with the tracks. The train compartment was unusually quiet. Most of the students had taken different routes home. I was alone, except for an old man snoring softly a few seats away, and the occasional snack vendor passing through. I wasn't hungry. I wasn't sleepy either. I was just nervous. It had been so long since I lived at home. Would it still feel like home? Would my room still have the glow-in-the-dark stars I pasted on the ceiling in 7th grade? Would my little brother still barge in every morning looking for a missing sock? Would Mom still smell like jasmine and cinnamon rolls? So much could change in 7 years. I reached into my bag and pulled out an old notebook, one I used to write letters in. Letters I never sent. Letters to home. Dear Mom, today I burned my hand in the chemistry lab. I didn't cry, but it hurt. I miss the way you used to blow on my cuts and kiss them like magic. No one does that here. Dear Dad, I got 2nd place in the speech competition. I remembered how you used to tell me to look people in the eyes when I spoke. I did, and they listened. Dear little brother, I saw a puppy that looked just like you. Have you started learning how to bark yet? I flipped through the pages. The ink was faded, but the emotions weren't. With every mile the train covered, excitement bubbled just beneath the surface of my nerves. What if everything was the same? Or worse, what if everything was different, and I no longer fit in? The train finally slowed down as it neared my hometown. I stood up, my legs stiff, heart racing. The platform came into view, and there they were. My mother, holding a bouquet of jasmine flowers. My father, in his favorite sweater vest, eyes moist. And my little brother Liam, taller than I remembered, but still waving like a maniac, grinning from ear to ear. I stepped off the train. The moment my mother hugged me, everything melted. The years, the distance, the questions. It was still home, maybe older, maybe a little quieter, but still mine. "We missed you," she whispered. "I missed me to Mum," I said, and smiled. As we walked out of the station hand in hand, I realized something simple yet powerful. Home wasn't a place, it was a feeling. Chapter 3. Old Rooms, New Eyes. The car ride from the station was quiet, but not awkward. It was the kind of silence that wrapped around you like a blanket, warm, familiar, and full of unspoken words. My mother kept glancing at me through the rearview mirror, her eyes shimmering with joy. My father hummed a tune from the 90s as he drove, his fingers tapping rhythmically against the steering wheel. Liam sat beside me, his legs now too long for the back seat we once fought over. "You've grown," I said, poking his arm. He grinned. "You shrank," I laughed. It was stupid, but it felt good, just like old times. As we turned the last corner, our house came into view, painted a little brighter, the fence newly mended, the bougainvillea on the side wall blooming like a pink waterfall. It felt familiar, but also different, like meeting an old friend after years apart. My heart thudded as we pulled into the driveway. "Go on," my dad said, handing me the house keys with a smile. "Welcome yourself home." I stepped out of the car and walked up to the front door. The key slipped easily into the lock, and with a small click, the door opened. The scent hit me first: jasmine, sandalwood, and something sweet baking in the kitchen. Home. Everything looked smaller than I remembered. The living room had the same faded blue sofa, the same slightly crooked family portrait above the TV, but the energy had changed. Or maybe I had. My room was just as I left it, except neater. Glow-in-the-dark stars still clung to the ceiling, though some had lost their shine. My study desk was dusted and stacked with books I once loved, and my childhood teddy bear sat on the bed like he'd been waiting all these years just for me. I dropped my bag, sat on the edge of the bed, and let the silence wash over me. It was strange. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times, and yet it felt completely new. "Dinner in 10 minutes, Mom called from the kitchen. I wandered over, following the trail of memories down the hallway. She was there in her apron, stirring something over the stove, a jasmine tucked behind her ear like always. The same rhythm, the same scent, the same calm hands. She turned, saw me watching, and smiled. "Hungry?" I nodded. She placed a warm apple pie on my plate. Some things never change. I looked around the kitchen, then at her. Some things do. That night, after dinner, I stood at the balcony overlooking our quiet lane. Crickets chirped, a soft breeze ruffled the curtains, and the stars blinked above. Everything was still, and for the first time in a long time, so was I. Chapter 4. The Letter Without a Name. A week had passed since I returned home, and the excitement of being back was beginning to settle into a comforting routine. Every morning, I helped my mother in the garden, picked flowers for the prayer room, and had chamomile tea with Dad before he left for work. Liam and I had resumed our daily banter like the 7 years apart had never happened. But something inside me still felt incomplete. One afternoon, while cleaning out the attic, I found an old box full of school journals and notebooks. Most of them were filled with doodles, class notes, and torn pages. But one notebook stood out, its cover wrapped in maroon silk, with a single word stitched on the front: Thoughts. I had forgotten about it. I opened it slowly, and on the very first page, I saw something I had once written, something I had never shown anyone. Sometimes I wish I could talk to someone who didn't know my face, didn't expect me to be anyone special. Someone who only knew me through my words. Would they still care? I stared at those words and laughed at my silly younger self. But then, an idea struck me sudden and unexpected. I didn't know where it came from. Maybe loneliness, maybe curiosity, maybe something deeper. Or maybe I just wanted to fulfill a 10-year-old's foolish little wish. I tore out a clean sheet of paper and began to write. Not to anyone in particular, just to someone out there. Dear stranger, I don't know your name, and you don't know mine, but I wonder, if I wrote to you, would you write back? If I told you about my dreams, would you care? I'm not looking for a fairy tale. I just want to be heard. If you feel the same, write back. But don't tell me your name. Let's just talk. No faces, no expectations. Let this be our secret. I read it twice, then sealed it in an envelope, laughing at my stupidity. At the bottom, I wrote, to someone who listens. The next morning, I walked to the local radio station mailbox, the one people used to send song requests and anonymous letters to for their evening program. The host was known for reading out love letters on air, some real, some dramatic. Maybe this would get lost like other millions of letters. Or maybe it would reach someone, but something about it felt right. I dropped the letter inside the rusted red box and walked away. Chapter 5. A reply from the unknown. The weather had turned crisp by morning. A soft drizzle tapped against Hannah's window, and the sky wore a pale gray cloak. She curled up by the windowsill with a cup of warm chamomile tea, her notebook on her lap. It had been 3 days since she dropped that anonymous letter into the radio station's mailbox, and coincidentally, it had been broadcast the very same day. Unbelievable, wasn't it? She laughed out loud when she heard the letter on the radio. She had never expected anyone to reply. A part of her had completely forgotten about it. Another part had hoped someone to listen quietly, secretly. But that day, as she tuned into her favorite evening broadcast, just as she always had during school holidays, the host's voice floated through the room with an unusual lilt. Good evening, dear listeners. The host's warm, familiar voice filled the room, smooth as ever. I'm Chris Connor, and you're tuned into Voices Between the Lines, where hearts speak louder than names. He chuckled lightly before continuing. Now, we usually share song requests, dedications, maybe even the occasional love confession. But this week, we received something different. Something quiet, heartfelt, and strangely moving. There was a pause, just enough to catch your breath. A letter unsigned, unknown, and unforgettable. So today, I'm going to read it. Not because it's dramatic, but because it's honest. He said, a letter without a name. A letter that asked not for music, but for connection. So here it is. The reply to the letter titled, To Someone Who Listens. Hannah's heart skipped hearing his words. The host cleared his throat and then began to read. Dear someone, you asked if someone would care to read your dreams, your thoughts, without knowing who you are. Yes, I care. I don't know your face or your name, but there was something honest in your words, and that's rare, so I'm writing back. Let this be a conversation between two souls, not to names. No expectations, no obligations, just truth. Tell me more. Tell me something real. From someone who's listening. Hannah sat frozen, her mug forgotten in her hands. Someone had replied. Someone had actually replied. Not just replied, understood. She felt it, that strange flutter in her chest. Excitement mixed with fear. This was no longer just her imagination. This was real. She blinked her eyes few times before pinching her arms. Ouch, it really was real. Without wasting a moment, she pulled out a sheet of cream-colored writing paper and began to write back. Dear someone who's listening, you asked for something real. Here's the truth. I feel like I've always been trying to be the person others want me to be. The perfect daughter, the polite friend, the smiling student. And sometimes I don't even know who I am beneath all that. But when I wrote to you, I didn't feel like I had to pretend. That means more than you can imagine. So here's to letters without names, words without faces, and truths without judgment. Tell me what's your truth. Yours, the girl without a name. She sealed the letter, took a walk through the damp streets, and slid it into the same radio station mailbox, her heart thudding. Somewhere out there, someone was reading her words, listening, and writing back. She didn't know it yet, but that someone was Jackson Wakera, quiet, thoughtful man with shadows in his past and a guarded heart. Their lives were still worlds apart, but their words were starting to bring them closer. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more videos.